86% have a computer, but only 75% actually have a broadband internet subscription. So 1/4 of Pittsburgh's residents don't have internet at home.
Thanks, Jessica. So a little bit about the university. We have approximately 6,600 full-time enrollment students that participate in over 200 undergraduate and graduate programs here at the campus. We do have the 4 big sort of colleges within campus. So arts and sciences, which again includes our nursing, our biology, the arts. We have the College of Education. We originally started off as a teacher education school, and that continues to be a strong tradition here at Pitt State. The School of Business, and then School of Technology, where we have plastics engineering, auto technology, those sort of things. So we have a wide variety of students also here on campus that come in for school and then go home when we're not in session. So that now that you know a little bit about us, we want to know about you. So this is a word cloud question. We understand some of us might be doing this on smartphones or other devices, so we're not going to be critical of your spelling at all to do. So if you've done any virtual programs, please just go ahead and type those in and submit. You can submit multiple times. If you haven't done any, that's fine too. Just let us know. And we're going to give about a minute or so to respond on that.
Ruth, what do you mean by virtual programs?
We want to see your interpretation of that before we get started. We're being tricky right now. This was also just to help us give a baseline of where everyone's at as we're doing this presentation. It's a little obviously harder to pull in virtual settings than in person.
Everybody likes a quiz at the beginning. It's fine.
So we're getting some options going right now. So obviously as word clouds work, the bigger the word means the more people who have said that options. So some people have none, and that's fine. It's always a good starting point. We have some trivia, some book clubs, book discussions, planning an anime discussion. That sounds interesting. Doing some readers advisory, student open research day. Looks like some people are doing a wide variety of items here.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter night. I kind of want to know more about what that entailed.
Butterbeer?
Maybe. Virtual butterbeer? All right. Looks like we have, see if any other large ones are coming in. Some webinars, cooking shows, some craft meetings and photography. The summer readings program as itself, and some author events. All right, so it looks like some of us have been doing a good group and some of us are just starting out basically. And that's fine. Hopefully you will all learn something to take away from this. So I'm going to turn it over to Tori, who's going to talk about how we define each type of program.
Yes, so we have 3 main ones that we are talking about. A live programming would be an event that we have pre-scheduled and we deliver it live. So we are doing a live program right now. We would count the participants that are actively on during the presentation, and then that includes video and audio content. Then we have pre-recorded, and that is usually created and recorded by library staff ahead of time. It can be viewed at any time, and we count the number of views before we either take that recording down, or if it stays up by the end of the year, however you do your stats. Also video, audio content. And then our self-directed passive programming is patron guided. You guide yourself. We create the information and put it out there for you to enjoy at your leisure. There's no video content necessarily involved.
So those are the working definitions we're going to go off of, and we're going to start now with some of the examples, and Tori's going to start with the live. Actually, now I lied. We like to know your thoughts first. So now that you guys know the formats or the types, we still want to know if you've been doing predominantly live, pre-recorded, self-directed, or none. You can select multiples, so feel free to do that as well as you hit the big blue submit button. And then Tori's going to give us some examples to start us off.
I am. Am I going to wait for the slide? No?
Yes, we're going to wait for the slide. I think there's still a couple people responding.
Kelly is advertising her Harry Potter night tonight. That sounds super fun. Kelly and Wamigo. I would like to check that out.
I
6:30
feel like we
p.m.
know Kelly and Wamigo.
Lots of pre-recorded being suggested here in the chat as well.
Awesome. All right, so it looks like a lot of people have responded, and it looks like majority have said live and then working their way down. So Tori's going to start us off with our examples of live programming.
Yes, I'm going to start with the two I'm involved in, book discussion and trivia nights. So first with book discussion, it was the quickest one to get off the ground while we were still at home. The first time we did it, we didn't really do anything. We created a Zoom link and an event, and they signed up, and we just kind of met and talked, and people were wanting, I think, human contact. So, and there was about 15 participants, probably maybe a little bit more for the first one. But after that, we got a little more organized, and we used Zoom and Facebook, like I said. And so we would create a link in Zoom for the meeting, and then we used it also for registration. So we would copy the link into our Facebook event, post that, share, reshare. You click the link, we would manually approve participants. We didn't want any Zoom bombers. Is that what we're going with? Yeah. And then we would include, of course, the book title and all that information. And when we started this, April, I think, was our first one. We did primarily used Hoopla, the Hoopla account. That way everybody had access that did have devices. They could do ebooks since we were closed for them to pick up books. And then I was able, as the event got closer, to through Zoom, resend the link to remind people, hey, don't forget, we're hanging out tomorrow doing the book discussion. And so we just share, and reshare that. Trivia was similar in creating the event. So we had Zoom and Facebook event, but then we used Kahoot to that platform to do the trivia. So I would research and create questions through Kahoot, and then Jessica would always double check me on that. And the patrons, of course, like this would need 2 devices because we would share the screen on Zoom, and that's where the questions would be. And then you would answer like you're doing today on Menti, but you'd answer Kahoot on your other device, or if you could do 2 taps on your computer. So we would still have to create it and then fact check it. So it wasn't super quick, and we didn't start probably doing that until May. I think we did our first Kahoot. But those were our first 2 our main live programs that we have done so far. And we do have at the end of the slides all the information for the different platforms, links and stuff that we use. So I think back to Ruth, maybe?
Yes. So we have done trivia as well, but we're going to talk about a couple of other things that we've done. A lot of the things that we are doing both at ACTS or Pittsburgh Public might do comparable, but they've done much more on the book discussion and trivia. And we've done, I think, a little bit more on authors or speakers coming in live, but they'll correct me if I'm wrong. So a couple of things when you're doing virtual live events with presenters, I feel like it's a little bit more upfront that you need to worry about. So one, you need to make sure your presenters, whether that's an author coming in, as you see us in the bottom corner with author Max McCoy, or if you're doing a panelist or etc., what are they comfortable with? Are they comfortable with the technology? Do you need to do a practice run through so that they're happy and they understand how it works? And even if you do that, doesn't mean they're not going to have technical problems the day of. You need to check on recording. Are they okay with being recorded? And if they're not, that's fine. But you need to make sure you ask up front. You can't record and then be like, we don't want it to be recorded. You also need to make sure of security. Tori briefly mentioned Zoom bombing, and that's very important as more trolls like to put in security settings. Like, are you having a waiting room so you can publicly advertise your Zoom link? Are you putting it only where there's a secret link to go in? Those sort of aspects are really important because you do not want your author or your presenter that has been invited into a safe virtual space to have a bad experience, because that reflects poorly on you. So if you notice in the middle down here, I'm hoping that you guys can see my cursor. Tori, can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so in this, we had a women's panel political candidates here in Kansas that were speaking about their experiences of doing that. Now, we all know that there's some people in the world who find humor in things of not being nice. So it was very important that they didn't have a negative experience when they're talking about these like barriers that they've overcome to run for political office. So just being aware of that. The last thing I want to point out is that we have had guest speakers here on campus. We are open and we are doing in-person classes, and I know different libraries are at different stages. So we had an event where we streamed the speakers in, and we live streamed that out to other platforms, Vimeo, Facebook Live, but we also had an in-person component. So if you didn't have internet access, as Jessica mentioned, there's a lot in Pittsburgh public area and Pittsburgh itself and Crawford County that don't have internet access, that you were still able to participate without worrying about that. So those are just a couple of big things to be concerned about from the get-go that takes a little bit more forethought just to go on. So I'm going to hand it over to Jessica to talk about pre-recorded.
Oh boy, yes, my favorite. So I saw that quite a few people did pre-recorded programming, and I saw lots of people said that they were doing pre-recorded or live story times. And so yes, that was a lot of what I was doing this summer. So as far as pre-recorded programming went, I feel like this was one of the main ways that the Pittsburgh Public Library has been, this summer at least, engaging with our patrons while we have been closed to the public. And so, right, like back in March, we closed when the schools around here went ahead and closed. And then we spent some time, you know, kind of in flux. We were at home, not sure what we were going to be doing. And then it was summer. And, you know, it's like, well, what are we doing? We have to get ready to go. We still have to provide, you know, stuff to our patrons. And so we definitely pivoted hard to the pre-recorded aspect. I think being live is kind of nerve-wracking. And so we thought, okay, we're gonna make all of our summer programs basically just happen on YouTube. And so I hope that other people had a successful summer with that as well. And so one of the things that we did especially was our puppet shows. We kind of pride ourselves on our puppet shows here. And so this seemed like a natural like crossover to recording. And we were very fortunate that the city of Pittsburgh has a very nice camera that we were able to borrow from them to record all our shows with, because I found that the equipment that we had just wasn't quite good enough. The quality isn't quite there. And so that's something to consider, you know, is your equipment, if you're going to keep doing virtual programming, is it good enough? Do you need to invest in something a little better? Your phones, though, I found that my phone camera worked pretty well for a lot of things. But so we recorded a lot of story times. I also recorded some craft videos. We did like a teen program where every week I would put out like a little challenge video for them. Teens love YouTube. And so I would put out a challenge like, go stargazing this week, or, you know, or something like that. Just a real short, like 1-minute video to try and engage with them. I was also able to connect with some of our speakers. I know some people said they had like guest speakers, as opposed to doing that live. KU, Natural History Museum, was actually supposed to come down this summer and do a program with us, as well as several other places in the state, but instead they opted to record a video for us about like Kansas fossils in particular. And they even made it like a little specific to like, here's what you might find in Pittsburgh. That was a really cool program. We had so many viewers. We had people from Utah that were like messaging us saying, we're gonna be there, which was really fun. And so that just went on our YouTube channel, right? It didn't have to be a live presentation. We just posted it when it was time for the event to go live and let people watch it there. We also took one of our actual live programs, a poetry reading by a local poet. We recorded it during the live Zoom meeting, and then we were able to upload that later to our YouTube channel. So people that were uncomfortable attending, you know, couldn't make it at that time, just for whatever reason that you didn't want to hop in a Zoom call, could still view it later. And so as the months go on, it's still up there. We get more views from it. We're able to get kind of more statistics out of it, which is a really great side effect of the pre-recorded programming, is that you're just getting more statistics for a lot of stuff. You're kind of getting more mileage out of it. I think that's all I've got for the pre-recorded stuff. I think we're going back to Ruth now.
Yeah, so self-directive or passive programming, I think is really kind of wonderful because once it's created, it's there for, depending on how you set it up, as long as you would like. So you don't have to worry about timing or any of that effect. It's for them when they would like it, kind of like the pre-programming, except you're using less of internet typically because you're not doing the video aspect of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is can you recover the artwork, which was a virtual escape room. I don't know how many people saw the Harry Potter virtual escape room in March out of Pennsylvania. That really seemed to kick off the virtual escape rooms. I know there's people who are doing it in Google Forms, which is how we did it. People are using LibWizards. People are doing Google Sites. It's a lot of fun to do. A couple things I do want to let you know. As you see there's a bit.ly link. Part of the reason for that, if you've done any of the virtual escape rooms, as you do the form, at the end of I use Google Forms. So at the end of the form, it says like, if you get done, please hit the submit button. And we would like to know like, how far did this go? If people don't click the blue submit button, so they get all the way through the escape room and they don't click that button, you do not get the stats of that individual participation. And obviously we're not collecting really intrusive data of any means, just what they would like to put in. If they don't want to put anything, they hit submit, that's fine. So if they don't click that submit button, you have no way of capturing it. Last I checked, the escape room all the way with the clicked submit is a little under 100 participants. I will say people have told me it was a little tough because we designed it for college students versus some of the easier ones. But it has gone as far away as Rhode Island and Florida. But the bit.ly link, how many people have clicked on it, is at like 600. So people could have got to that last screen and said, I don't want this information because I just don't like sharing that. And so I would never know without having a customized link. So if you're doing any sort of custom work in virtual escape rooms, they have a lot of work to do the story guidelines. Definitely make sure you have a way of at least capturing it at multiple points to have that information. The other thing that we did as a passive activity at Pitt State, we have a software app called Goose Chase, which it does scavenger hunts. And so we created, as you see here in the bottom corner, using nature to create art. And so you can see people went outside for Earth Week to do these sort of projects, and they submitted it. So we did put a timeline on this one, like you had, I think, 2 weeks, and then it would be closed. So, but it was still when they wanted to do it, they wanted to do it at midnight, that's fine, to do this sort of activities and think about it. I'm gonna go ahead and move on, but if you have questions at the end, we will be happy to take those. And we're gonna talk a little bit about our challenges and considerations that we have. So the first thing is when we pivoted to virtual. So there's a lot of like differences between doing live and virtual. From our end at the university, it's the expectation of doing them. So when back in March, it was kind of sudden. I don't remember if we can remember back to the early pandemic days of how things were constantly changing, right? Initially, it was students are going to have an extended spring break and then they're going to come back. They're not going to come back. It was pretty much daily or hourly changes of what's happening. And so to figure out what you're doing for programming in that setting was a little, I would say, stressful, just to know what you want to do and be successful at. And the other thing about that is it's stressful for us. You know, it's very stressful for your students who don't know anything. Are they coming back to campus after spring break, or are they going to go completely virtual? The people who didn't take their things home, what do they have? All the professors are now suddenly moving all their coursework to going virtual. So a concern for us was, are they going to have screen fatigue? Like if we create something, are they even going to want to participate in it just because of all the stress and anxiety in their life, plus just being on a screen for so long. So we were a little bit slower in the sense of what we thought our students were expecting from us and how to best meet their needs going forward. So we were slow because of the changes, but we did go there, and I think it has been successful. And the students who have done the things have really appreciated them being there, as well as some of the faculty and such. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to talk about how that worked for the public library.
Yes, certainly. So like I said, there was kind of this rush in May to go, okay, well, we are going to be all virtual at this point. So how are we going to meet all of these needs? And then I basically spent the whole summer with my headphones on in front of my computer screens, frantically editing video together for everything that we were trying to put out, right? And doing live programming, with our teens and our adults, and right, it's just exhausting. There is so much more to be aware of, I feel like, mental health wise, whenever you're considering doing virtual programs, because I might be very introverted, but there is something very different about being physically in front of people where, you know, especially with my teens, where it's just like, it's a little more casual, it's very comfortable, versus I'm gonna record this video of myself, and I have to look like smiley and happy because this is gonna be posted on YouTube and anybody could come look at this. And so it's that presence of being on, of, you know, the customer service face, that you have to be so much more aware of, because it's, the internet is forever, right? And I'm intentionally putting it out there. And so I think that's something that you have to be very cognizant of with yourself, especially going forward, doing more virtual programming. How much time can you devote to this? And just being aware of that, prioritizing kind of what you really can do with yourself. So I think Tori's going to talk next about the difference between live programming and drop-in programming.
Yes. Transitioning that was just so much fun. So I'm going to once again compare like book discussion and trivia, things I've learned. In-person programming, we had 2 different book discussion groups at the library. One of them was like 20 plus people. And then the one I led, I was lucky if I could get 8 people, which, I mean, when you meet, it's kind of nice to have a bigger group. But I've learned on virtual live programming, it is easier to do the smaller group. It's because you feel awkward when there's a large number of people trying to talk at once. And well, we know how Zoom works. We've all been doing it for a while now. So small talk was a little awkward when you would meet at the beginning. So that was kind of a bummer. There was the low cost of doing virtual programming because we're not buying snacks. Although people keep wanting me to send pizzas to their house. It'd be really cool if we did that. It was good for people who have maybe always wanted to join us, but when we met in person, it was at 6:30 and maybe the time wasn't right. Or, you know, once you get home, you take those shoes off, take off your mask. Don't want to put any of that back on to go out. But if you're doing it virtually, you can just join us online. So I think we've pulled in some people maybe we didn't when we were doing it in person. And then also, if you're either going to be late, sometimes if in the in-person, you're going to be 5 or 10 minutes late, you don't want to walk in the middle, but really online, it's pretty easy to just pop in. We just, you know, add you in and we just keep going. And then also you can leave the same way. If you need to leave a little early, no big deal. You just leave meeting and we talk about you behind your back. We don't. Trivia is kind of the same thing. We hosted bar trivia at one of our local bars, and we would have, I want to say massive crowds, but I mean like 36, I think was kind of our average. Our trivia was a little different. We used PowerPoint and would set up a screen, and they actually had written answers that we had to grade. And so from setup to cleanup, we were there 3.5 hours. And the trivia itself usually took at least 2. And then, like I said, we had the grade and everything like that. So one of the positives with virtual is we're using Kahoot. We only do 31 questions and it grades itself. So that is very nice. It's still time consuming getting all the virtual ready, and you still, you know, we're still creating the questions like we did before and double checking each other. So that still takes time. One of the negatives also of Zoom is, or virtual, is that when you meet in person at the bar, or, you know, you can hang out, talk, have a couple drinks, chill. So people can't really especially with trivia versus book discussion, people aren't really interacting with each other. But one of the positives of virtual is families can now do our trivia because it's not in a place where you have to be 21 or older to get in. So we've had a couple families that I think all summer I think the dad competed on his own, but he didn't want the kids to slow him down, I think. I don't know. He did win a lot. So there's been that positive, and we've had a lot of family interaction on our trivia being online. In person, you won, which I forgot, I meant to bring it with me, the sweet 3D printed trivia that we make here at the library. I was going to bring up Yoda. He's pretty nice looking. So we would print a themed trivia or trophy that went with the bar trivia. And so we had like Game of Thrones, we had the throne, Star Wars, we had Yoda. But now on Kahoot, the winner gets super awesome bragging rights and virtual confetti. So it just rains down on you. So, I mean, there's good and bad with both. I think it's been pretty successful. And then, of course, burnout is happening everywhere. So I'm not sure who's next.
That's fine. I'm going to go after that. Tori, giving us a direct comparison between the live versus drop-in, accessibility and inclusivity. So obviously, as we're going virtual, it's important that we try to be accessible, even if we're in person, to be accessible to all people and not to be exclusionary by just lack of forethought or accommodations. So if you're doing virtual, if you're uploading to YouTube, to make sure you have captioning, just like passive, if you have images, make sure there's alt text, making sure if you're on a software like Google Slides, they'll do some live captioning instantly. So if you're using that software presentation, to have that available. As you can see right now, our video is all turned on. So if anybody needs to lip read, that is a possibility as well. So just doing some of that pre-forethought in general. And to also note with inclusivity, we have mentioned that not everyone has internet. So like there's definitely spots where the campus has extended the Wi-Fi, and there's definitely people who are doing homework and projects in the parking lot in their car or being farther away because buildings were not open in the summer. So being aware of that, and that's part of the reason also using the Google Forms, like that doesn't take as much. So being considerate if they only have a smartphone, what is their data if they're not on Wi-Fi? So like on the escape room, we didn't include video because video takes longer. If that's really important to do it, they're not going to be successful if they have that limitation in play. So to kind of think of all aspects of what is available and what isn't available, and how you can try to reach the best audience and be the most inclusivity as possible as we're in this period. I think obviously people are also giving some grace if everything's not perfect, but you do want to try our best to be that welcoming place of the library. I think Jessica has a little bit more about accessibility and then stats.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, so I said at the beginning that Pittsburgh, 83% have computers, but only 75% actually have good broadband internet access. And so this was something that became an issue back in March whenever the schools closed and were closed for the rest of the school year, that they pivoted to virtual learning. And so while our schools are fortunate to be one-to-one, meaning that they have technology for the kids to take home, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have internet access at home to be able to use those, right? And we've all seen those pictures of kids, right, outside of, Taco Bell or sitting in a parking lot trying to use the internet somewhere. And so while we have tried to help get the internet access more available while the library is closed by extending our Wi-Fi into our parking lot. The schools around here have also just gotten a grant to get 50 hotspots to give to families that don't have internet access and are trying to do virtual learning still, so they can help them have better access from home. And the city of Pittsburgh is working on getting some broadband for their downtown area, so you can use it anywhere downtown. That's still going to be a ways off. That doesn't fix the issue that our society is not made to have the internet as a public utility yet. You know, that's something that your city has to decide for itself. And so as long as you're doing virtual programming, you have to consider that you are going to be leaving some people out. And so, for example, a lot of my teen programs, most of my teenagers are using the library or coming into the library, the kids that I know, because they need that internet access. And so when I'm doing programs that are virtual, they're not my audience. This is going to be a different teen audience, right? Because I don't have any way to connect with them this way. So it's important to consider, like, who is this meant for? Who are you engaging with? And then as far as stats go, so I think that if you're a public librarian, this summer we were asked to count our statistics differently from the state. So we were asked to do in-person, live, or recorded versus kind of how it used to be, where it was, were you doing a program? What age group was it meant for, and how many people were there, right? Now they want you to ask, was it technically an in-person program? Were you doing it live via Zoom like this? Or was it something that you recorded and put out there? And then how are you counting those statistics? Is it the number of viewers? Is it the number of website clicks, link clicks? And so as you're going forward and doing more virtual programming, people are becoming more virtual literate. You have to consider, how does that change how I'm going to be keeping my statistics? How does that change how we think about what makes something successful? And because what is successful for an in-person program, I would not consider to be successful for a virtual program. Those are completely different things. And so it's just, I think we need to change the way that we think about these things, and keep that conversation going forward. I believe, Ruth, you did not experience any changes at the academic level, right, with statistics?
No, we're still reporting the same way because we're not responding to the state in the way that the publics are. So a lot of things, I know at the academic side of the house, people are concerned about like impressions and participation in general. As you mentioned, we can go back, like if it's something that we did live and then also recorded, we can add those into our stats. So it's less stressful at my institution for that. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to the big question of where do we go from here? And we're just going to kind of be quick because we want to leave plenty of time for everyone for engagement and having combo at the end. So the big one is sustainability, and then what do we do next? Like, how long are we going to be virtual? And I think my answer is much different than Jessica and Tori's. We had already been kind of thinking at ACTS of how we can do more to reach our distance and online learners. And then the pandemic happened. How perfect. Words we typically don't say together right now. So we're definitely.
Oh, Ruth, I think we just lost your audio there.
Sorry, I have a headset mic. Thank you. So because we are already planning on doing virtual, but there is a lot of time work in doing virtual sustainability, both staff effort for the turnout and making sure that you don't get burnout on what you're doing. We're going to be limiting it. So there's some periodical events that occur that are virtual only to reach that population. And as Jessica mentioned earlier, doing things that we can link back later. So we did a banned books event, and you can celebrate not being censored year round and the fight against censorship year round. So linking that back and reusing content as much as possible, just because of that. So it's very important to, I think, to consider both your time, your workload, and the expectation of what that final product's going to look at. The other thing is the platform. Right now, the institution is paying for our Zoom licenses. So we have unlimited, all the magical things, we can have 300 plus, all of that. And that's at some point, just like Goose Chase, money does matter. And so will any of these softwares go away over time because we're not in a pandemic, or will those budget constraints change if you're paying for additional software? So that's something to keep about, that we're thinking about on a regular. And I'm going to let you guys talk about what you're thinking.
Okay, I know we're short on time. I know we're thinking that now that we've done a book discussion and trivia online, for the group that I host in-person book discussion, I don't know why I can't also add a Zoom component to it. So that person who gets home doesn't have time to get here, they could still hop on Zoom, and we'd maybe have a screen in the room with us, and we could all participate with them and kind of do a joint discussion. Trivia, I think, would be more some of our past ones we might create into a Kahoot, maybe put in something like that, and then make it a passive program on our website. And just try to combine some of it. And yeah, if you've done the work, you might as well record it while you're doing it, maybe reuse it. Jessica?
Yes, so and one of the things we're talking about is we always do a second grader visit every year to the library. So all the kids in the city come to the library and get like library cards and do a tour. And so we're having to do that virtual now, but thankfully they normally get a puppet show. I have 20 puppet shows I've already recorded. That is going to be so useful over and over for the next several years, also because I recorded those in 4K. So I think that's going to be, you know, like the quality is very good. I'm going to be able to use that for quite a while. So the things that you're doing virtually, especially if you're recording them, if you're keeping them, you're going to be able to use that for quite a bit longer. And I think that's going to be a real asset.
All right, so the next part is we're going to talk about questions or comments we want to chat. We do have a Menti so that you can add it in because the end is near. And so we have some options. And apparently I got very click happy. So make sure you're wearing your mask in this fire of a year. As you're waiting for some participants, I did see we had a chat question about virtual programs for older adults who may not be able to access Zoom or a computer. So the first thing I would say, if they're not familiar with Zoom, I do an alumni book club, and most, I think, adults, if they're not familiar with Zoom, they're at least familiar with somewhat Facebook. And so we don't do ours live, but it's an asynchronous like post, like you would do like a traditional sort of chat, that style. If they're not doing any computers, I think it wouldn't be virtual programming. But I think there's other options where you, I know the public, you guys did the dial a story option. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so this is kind of an old concept, but the dial a story, so we have like a phone number set up where we've recorded a story that will read to you, and you can just call in and then you can listen to it. So that is specifically for little kids, but this same thing could be used for any kind of program that you'd want to do that you need to deliver just like orally, you know, like older adults, they're used to doing this. This is how you used to call in and get the weather. This is how you would call in and get the movie times. Like, I think it's still a very fun way to do that, to deliver that. So if you can think of something, if you had like a craft program you wanted to do and you could just deliver, like besides writing it down, maybe you could also record the instructions and put that on that phone number. So when someone called, they could just listen to it. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I know that people have also just recorded you reading like a chapter of a book. So maybe like I get a part of a chapter of a book in my email every day. You could do this same thing where once a week you record a little bit of you reading a chapter of a book. And I think you're okay with copyright for that reason, because you're not reading the full entirety of it. You're breaking it up, you know, you're never having the full thing up at one time. And I think people would really appreciate having that human connection with your local librarian.
I was going to say, you could also look for short stories that were published before, what is it right now, 1924?
Yes, absolutely.
So you don't have to worry about copyright. All right, looks like we have some questions behind the dumpster fire. Is anyone else doing make and take bags to complement online events, passive programs? Will you keep it up or scale it back? Here at the academic side, we are now open for people. And we've been open 10-ish weeks. I'm bad at counting. So we haven't personally thought about it. We've been thinking we might do something for finals because our students will leave us November 20th and go home. So maybe to take something there, but I know I haven't. Tori, Jessica?
Yes, so actually this summer, whenever we were doing the paleontology program and I posted that, I made these little dinosaur eggs. And so we bought real fossils and then I kind of put them in this gross like clay mixture and put it in an Easter egg. And then I put like some tools and I had like a little kit of like paleontology stuff. And so they could watch that video and then they could go pick one of these up from the library and like break it open and find their little fossil. It was really fun. And I think that was really successful. People really liked that. As far as adult programming's gone, we had an iCraft program so people could come in, they like adults specifically came in and did a craft with us that was just like low key. You just have cookies and, you know, have some fun. And so we have, I don't think we've managed to get it out the door yet.
No, yeah, we keep saying we need to do this, but like the iCraft was 6th grade and up, so.
Yes, so we have some crafts prepared that I imagine we would record a little video of here's how you make it, and then we would distribute it. But again, these things just take time, and sometimes you don't have that amount of time. But it is something that I think would be very good for us to keep doing in the future.
Yes, and I think this winter maybe we'll get the iCraft maybe back on track.
In the chat, Stacy Strickland said that their summer literacy program take-home craft bag started really strong, but then week 6, people stopped. So I'm glad it started off strong for you, Stacy. I'm kind of curious as to which sort of craft options, because there's so many craft options that you did. Emily Miller also said they did it similarly, and then they give the bags to go, and then they tune in for their Zoom session to craft along with everybody, which I think is fabulous. Do we have a favorite platform for presentations, i.e. Menti.com? I enjoy Menti because it's comparable to Kahoot, but the license is cheaper because Kahoot is advertised at educational, depending on what you can get for institutional licensing. But it's cheaper because it's known more as a business software, but it does have quiz options and such. Again, it is paid for various tiers, so you pay for what you want, but it's typically used in the business world. And so for that reason, it was shockingly slightly cheaper than Kahoot, but I do know there's people who use Kahoot on our institution. Tori, Jessica?
I don't know that I have a favorite.
I would say I just like to use Canva.
Yeah,
Canva and I are like this right now. If you don't use Canva, you should. It's just an online graphic design platform.
Yeah. I do see there was another question about recordings. Oops,
from Emily way earlier. I was looking at that one too.
Yeah, she just reposted.
Yeah. Thanks, Emily, for reposting. So she is having a problem with the quality of recordings from live events. Both Facebook and Zoom, the quality looks fine live, but it's poor once it saves and uploads. Anyone have a tip?
So I would say, I think, I cannot tell you for sure, but I think with Zoom, you have settings, and maybe this is with like, I don't know if you've tried recently, they updated Zoom. There might be some things there, but you can choose the quality that you want with Zoom, like how you want to save it. And so that might have something to do with it. If anybody else has any tips, I'd be happy to hear them. I'm not sure about with Facebook. We didn't do a lot of Facebook Live events when I was thinking about doing all of our pre-recorded stuff and how to put it out there. I specifically chose to just put things on YouTube and then advertise on Facebook that they were on YouTube, because I saw lots of parents saying that they wanted content to be on YouTube, because then if they had a TV that was a smart TV, they could just put it up there and their kid could sit there, rather than like having to hand them their phone and like, you know, they're sitting like that, trying to watch a little puppet show. So if anybody has any tips with Facebook, I'd be happy to hear that.
I'm not seeing anything, but I think Maggie had a great suggestion in the chat, and I want to read out since we are being recorded. Maggie mentioned that the Kansas Talking Books, they've been doing phone book plugs, where they call the patrons, they answered, and then they're joined to a conference call where they discuss the book. And then she also mentioned that they moved to Zoom, and I think we forgot to mention that you can call into Zoom. So if you have people who are less tech savvy, that is an option. I also see that we have a minute left, so we'll come back to any questions at the end. We're happy to stay on. If Crystal's happy to stay on and you want to chat with us, we are 100% happy to be here and answer. We're all learning together. At any point after this, feel free to reach out to us. All our email and contact information is there with our emails. This presentation is also available in the shared Google folders that were on the KLA thinkbig.org. But we would like your last minute participation with Minty. If you really enjoyed, because we love instant feedback, if you really enjoyed the presentation, feel free to hit the heart. If you just thought it was good, give us a thumbs up, and you're like, I didn't learn anything and this made me sad. Hopefully not, but hit the thumbs down. We won't cry on camera.
That's fair enough.
At the end of this PowerPoint, which you haven't seen because we want to give people some time to respond, we do have some software tools and just some information about those, as well as some other sites. If you haven't done virtual programming and you want some more of like the nitty gritty of how to start, that's the last slide of the presentation, which again is available. And if you can't find that, feel free to email us and we'll happily send it to you. Because we're here, we're all in this together, virtually.
Virtually together.
I want to say Stacy's radio transmitter to do drive-in programs, very cool. I saw that earlier this summer that people were doing that, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm so glad you're able to do it, because when I looked at it, I thought, oh, this also looks kind of complicated. And I can only do so much in one day, so. And then the person asking about the dial-a story. So the dial-a story was not a web page. Our IT person set that up for us, and I can get more information if you are interested. You can send me an email. But I believe it is set up like through a computer. Yeah. It's not just like our voicemail, but you just record it and they were able to put it on there for us. And then when you dial it, that's all you hear. It doesn't even like ring. You just go straight to it.
I'm going through the chat, Jessica, and somebody asked about what is a good length for a virtual recording? What have you found?
Oh, yes. So if you're talking about like how to do video editing, or are we talking about like screen capturing?
I think they just want to know how long have you, like the typical YouTube, how long has yours been?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I addressed that very shortly. But so I found that videos for teens, so that's primarily my audience, as short as you can make it. Teens watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of TikTok content, and YouTube actually prioritizes videos that are short. They will push those out a little bit more. So if you, like, all of my videos for the Teen Weekly Challenges were 1 minute, and because their attention span is short, they just want to watch it and get it over with. I know when I watch a video, I don't want to be watching it forever. I'm like clicking ahead. If it's got captioning, I turn the audio off and just read the captions. So whatever you can do to facilitate that. For the story times, it can be longer because they're used to sitting in front of a TV and watching like a TV show. And that's essentially what a story time is for them when it's on the TV, is just a TV show. So we said about 20 minutes because that's generally what our in-person story times ran. And like a puppet show, we did 2 puppet shows. So a puppet show is about 8 to 10 minutes, which is generally when they're watching a TV show, it'll be like actually 2 episodes sometimes back to back, and they're about that length. So I think that's good. And for adults, I would say our trivia programs ran about 45 minutes. That's about as long as I want to be on a virtual call.
Well, we've been past that. So.
Yeah, we've been past that. So thank you for staying with us. Somebody asked about virtual confetti, and it's my new favorite thing to do, not the Kahoot confetti, but the in-person, mainly because it doesn't make our janitors mad. And I feel like confetti sometimes is like glitter. You find it for
ever
years later. So my little confetti hands, I'm trying to make sure you guys can see it. Confetti. So thank you guys for joining us. I don't see any other last minute questions.
I think that confetti was about in Kahoot specifically, and it does it on its own. I recommend checking out Kahoot if you can, but they confetti on their own. And it was in a presentation earlier this morning that Jennifer McPherson was doing, and she had confetti. So you might ask her. Yeah, she had screen confetti.
So that's fanciness. I'm just going to flip through. So in case you wanted to see some of the software tools, that's available here. And then the bibliography is at the end. So I think we are definitely over on time. So thank you for staying with us. We appreciate your time and attention. Crystal, is there anything else we need to do?
Nope, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I